was you were born in Kamloops.
Yeah, not in
But
Kamloops,
you-
close to Kamloops. I was born in a spot called Duck Range.
And you said where at Duck Range, though?
Pardon?
At Duck Range, you were born at your uncle's.
His house, yeah.
You said ranch.
Yeah, it was a ranch, big ranch.
Like how big? Cattle ranch?
Probably a couple sections of land. Yeah, cattle ranch. He came out here from England when he was 17, and of course, not many white ladies, so his first wife was an Indian gal.
This was your uncle?
My uncle, he had
Uncle,
two
what was his name?
sons. One of them looked like Sitting Bull, and the other one was as white as you and I.
No, wait, what was his name? Uncle what?
Tom Hill.
Now, did he move to Blaine?
Yeah.
Did he farm there too?
Oh yes, he had mainly dairy cattle. But when he was in Canada, he had beef cattle.
But you worked on the place in Blaine, right?
Yeah, times. Yeah.
How old were you then?
Oh, 12, 13. Helped him build a garage. And he had some 2x4s that he wanted to use for the rafters. And he didn't know how to cut the pitch, and I didn't either. So his neighbor come by, and he says, oh, I'll ask him, he's a good carpenter. So the guy says, what do you want, Tom, for a pitch? Quarter? Half? Third? No, Tom, he picked that one. No thought as to
What that means,
garage,
right?
Or the length of the boards that he had. So he nails them all together, all the rafters, puts a piece of plywood across on the top, and it goes and it go right up in between the walls. So he says, I'll fix them bloody things. He gets a big sledgehammer and he hammers them down. So of course the cut at the top of the thing, well, they're completely off. I'll never forget that. Then he would put a door in. He had it wedged up there to put in the hinges. And my aunt was such a tidy woman. She's out there walking around picking up scraps of wood and throwing them in her apron. And the door, I'm pounding, the door comes loose, hits her on the head. But she's staggering around. And she says, bloody fine woman out here on no business when a man's working. That's all it's at me.
So now, how old were you then, do you think?
About 13. Yeah.
So, but what do you remember of Kamloops? Do you remember any of that?
I don't remember. No.
When did your family?
4.
You were 4?
4. Well, yeah. When we lived, probably somewhere between 40 and 60 miles northeast of Kamloops. We were about halfway between Kamloops and Revelstoke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So then, where did you move from there?
We moved to Everett. My dad was a good carpenter, and they needed carpenters on the railroad, and I don't know how somebody told him about it, so he came down here. And
So he was working for the railroad?
all his life here, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, now, but you worked for the railroad too, right?
When I wasn't even old enough, but one of my dad's, I was mad at the people I was working for as an apprentice. I'd been there a year,
Doing what?
and I didn't have any raises.
What were you doing there? Where?
I was an apprentice sheet metal,
Oh,
and I was complaining to one of my dad's friends that was pretty close to me. He says, Lenny, they're hiring all railroad men, son. Why don't you go to work for the railroad and tell them to stick their job? So I went to work for the railroad. as a student brakeman. I did that for about 6 weeks, and in the middle of winter, then they laid us all off, and they just trained us. So then I was out of work, and I walked, and I walked, and I walked, and I pestered this one sheet metal shop so much that one day they'd fired a guy and they hired me.
Because you were there,
Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah. That was from Towson's.
How old were you then?
Oh, see. About 1937, so I was about 19.
So, okay, tell me about your violin.
What about it?
How old were you when you got it?
About 7,
7?
yeah,
And where were you living then?
in Everett,
In Everett.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
2914 Leonard Drive.
And now
That's
you're
my address.
now whose idea was it to play violin?
Well, it was it's kind of a school thing. They these guys that taught instruments went around to the schools, and they would send in a sign-up sheet to different classes, and I think I was in the 2nd grade, and I begged my folks that I wanted to take lessons, and so I signed up with old, the heck was his name? His last name was Elster, a Jewish man.
You said he played with the Seattle Symphony?
He was the head, first place,
First chair?
first chair violinist, yeah. Max Elster. Nice little man. Poor teacher. he didn't make me. Of course, he's getting the money. He don't care how long.
So, but you got the violin from him.
Yeah.
You said he played up in Alaska.
Oh, when he was young,
Yeah.
that's where he made his money. He and another guy went around and toboggan sleds to all the mining camps. You know, they were just hungry for entertainment and music. And these two guys, Jewish boys, had their violins, and they got the gold. They went around and played for these guys, and he said, God, they'd hug and dance one another, just as they hungered for music.
Right.
And so he and this guy came back and started the Arctic Fur Company in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
That's
So now,
what I mean.
how did you meet Lenore?
She was I used to have I had a job that was a kind of a lot of paperwork. All of the repetitious things made in the shop went over my desk.
This was sheet metal again?
Yeah, in Bremerton, in the layout department.
How old were you then?
Well, we got married. I was 24, and she was 19. Both of us about to be a year older. About a month later, she was a year older, and so we were actual.
Like 20 and 25
She
almost.
was 20 and I was 25, yeah.
And how long did you know each other before you got married, though?
How long did I know her? Well, I knew her from being in the office because she used to type up all my paperwork that I had. And didn't know her very long when we got married. She found out where I went dancing. She used to go to the modern dance which was on Friday night, but I went to the old timers dance, which was square dances and schottisches and polkas, and
What was the modern dance?
well, what we danced.
Like jitterbug and...
No, yeah, in modern day dancing, but on Saturday night was square dances and the Swedish waltz. It was just fun.
Polka.
Polkas and schottisches, just fun.
Yeah.
The dances. The reason I went out there, I lived with the Basque with two guys that were Norwegian kids that were used to these kind of dances.
Ah.
So,
So you started picking up Norwegian ways.
yeah, it sure did. It turned out Lenore found out, and so she showed up there one night with her cousin, and of course, naturally, I asked her to dance. And,
Naturally.
in fact, I tripped on her heel and fell on my back.
What were you dancing?
Oh, probably a schottish or a polka. Yeah, those are fun dances.
So wait, okay, so, but you knew her, but she just showed up there.
Yeah, she showed up. She knew where I went dancing. She came with her cousin from down in Bend, Oregon, was there visiting them. He was on leave from the Army.
Now, were you enlisted then yet?
Pardon?
Had you signed up for the Navy then?
No. No, we got married in April, and
Now, when was this dance though? How long between the dance and the marriage?
well, probably around Valentine's Day, and we got married the 17th of April.
Nice. Okay, so then now what year was this?
1943.
1943.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been at war for a year now.
We've been at war for a year, yeah. Yeah.
And so then how'd you get in the Navy?
Well, I knew, I was drafted, but in fact, I worked in the Navy Yard, and if you had any skills, they tried to hang on to you, but they couldn't do that. And when I knew that I was going to have to go, my friend and I decided that we didn't want to be in the damn Army, we'd go in the Marines.
Yeah.
So we both signed up for the Marines. Well, I went, the day we signed up, and I got home, I got my mail, I had a notice that the Admiral in the Navy Yard was creating a ship repair unit, and people like me that they were losing, they didn't want to lose. So, great, I'm in the Navy. I go over to my guy that signed me up in the Marines. He said, "Hey kid, I don't blame you. Anybody can get, you go in there second class petty officer, and you'll be just a recruit in the Army, or the Marines." So I signed up in the Navy.
But you didn't.
He gave me my papers back, and I went over to the Navy and enlisted in the Navy.
But did you think you were going to be staying there in Bremerton at the time, or Everett?
I didn't know. I didn't have any idea. It was the Admiral that was forming this outfit, but I went this was after I was signed up in the Navy. They sent me to Farragut, to boot camp, and when you went through all this paper testing and stuff, and they decided they'd send me to a radar school, that I was good at sound and things.
At what point did they figure out you weren't an American?
Oh, they didn't care.
No, your mom, Lenore wrote some letter. I remember some letter that she had to write about.
She got mad. I didn't really know. I didn't have any citizenship papers. I didn't know what I was. I didn't know whether I was a citizen of this country or a citizen of Canada. And my mom didn't know. She was an old English gal, and my dad was off somewhere. Oh, I went to an old judge who was a friend of the guy I worked for. She'll go up and see this judge. So he said, "Al," he said, "the best thing you can do is file for first papers." So I filed for first papers. And the immigration office called me down there, and they said, "If everything on these papers is good, you can't get citizenship papers. You're already a citizen." And I said, well, this looks like a, so he gave me a bunch of things. I had to have a search made in Ottawa that my dad wasn't a citizen of Canada at the time I was born. I had to get my grandmother, they didn't make birth certificates when he was born in Minneapolis, so I had to get my grandmother to sign an affidavit that she was his mother, and oh God, a whole ream of crap, and filed into an affidavit. So I went down to the immigration guy, and I said, Jesus, I said, just, you know, everything's fine. And I said, God, this just looks like a mess of papers to me. So he typed on the red ink on the face of a government letter that was when I was covered as derivative citizenship. That's what I have today.
You got into the Navy. How long had you been married?
Year.
You were married 1 year. And then how quickly were you up in Alaska?
Well, I probably went in April, and went through boot camp, and they sent me to San Diego to radar school, and you know, I had 9 years as a sheet metal worker, and they sent me to a radar school. So that's how, you know, it's a wonder we won that war. We just had so much of everything. We just smothered it. That's what it amounted to. You know, we had millions of guys. We had 17 million people in the service.
So when you guys got married, when you and Lenore got married, where did you first live?
We lived at a government housing project over in a spot called Manette. It was across an inlet from Bremerton.
What was the house like?
Pardon?
What was the house like?
It was an apartment.
Oh,
Yeah, 2 bedroom. And then,
Tina called something the chicken coop.
well, we did live in the chicken coop.
Wait, when did you live in when did you live in a chicken coop?
Well, after the war, I went back to the Navy Yard because they had to hire back all servicemen, and but I had in mind that I didn't like it in the Navy Yard. I just, you know, half the time you had to hide out to keep from, you know, they didn't have enough work for you. So you'd sit down in the bottom. I can remember sitting down in the bottom of a hole, and the kid and I would pick up buckets of bolts and stuff that were loose from the construction. Put a bucket across the bottom of the hole, and we'd sit down there tossing bolts.
For how much an hour?
Oh, probably in those days, probably $2 an hour.
Oh, well, that's hardly anything. There's probably a good deal for the bolt maker. So I was asking you about the chicken coop.
Well, at that time, Lenore and I lived in government housing, and I knew that I didn't want to stay in the Navy Yard. I just couldn't stand the politics, the whole thing, you know. There was much hatred between people who went in the service and guys that didn't, that were deferred or for some reason or that didn't have to go. I didn't want to go in the service, for God's sake, but I was the right age and everything, even though I was married. But there was a lot of bitterness because when we came back, we had preference, military preference, see?
For the jobs.
So, for the jobs. So it was a bad situation. Phooey, I don't have to stay in here. I've learned my trade and learned it well. So one of my former cohorts in Everett had started his own shop and went up to Everett, and he hired me. And so now comes a place to live. So I had built a chicken coop on my sister and brother-in-law's property for
Now,
them.
wait, just let me clarify for a second, because when I think chicken coop, I think you mean you have chickens living in it.
It was built for chickens.
Okay,
And
so there weren't
had
actually
been-
chickens
there had
living
been
in it.
Chickens in it, but they never did anything with it. It was just set up there vacant.
But
So
how
I
many
thought-
how many chickens? Because this how
Oh, probably a couple dozen. So what was it, about 12 by 12?
12 by 12.
Yeah. So I, Lenore and I looked at it.
Was there a
and I
nice-
said, hell, I can insulate this, and we'll put where that screen is. We'll just put in some windows, and we'll live here.
But what about like a bathroom or a kitchen or
We
a,
went down and used my sister's house.
ah?
She was just,
So
Maybe-
you guys didn't really need anything more than a bed.
we had a couch that folded out and made into a
Oh, you didn't even need a bed.
no, it was a couch. Well, we really had humble beginnings,
It sounds like it.
yeah. So anyway, we lived there. I got tired. When I got out of the service, we had sold our car. We had a nice 41 Chevrolet Sport Coupe, but no money to speak of. I had maybe $3,000. So we sold that so Lenore would have a little extra money to tide her over during the war. And
So you had $3,000, and you sold your car,
sold my car.
and you're in the Navy.
I'm in the Navy. And so when I got out, that same car was, that I got about more than I paid for it. I thought it was did fine. I got paid about $1,000 for it and got about $1,200. And when I come out back after, well, I figured I'd buy it again for less money. It was up to about $2,000.
Oh man.
So I figured, well, hell, I got an old Model A, I'll just buy another one. So I
A Model A.
bought a 1930 Model A coupe. And
What year was this now? 40.
This is about 45, 46.
That would have been an old car then.
Well, no, I paid about $60 for it. And my brother-in-law was really good at auto repair, and so I took the engine out, sent it in, and had a reboard and new cylinders and new pistons, and put it back in. And sure, I drove that thing for 2 years. And we lived in the chicken coop, and I went back and forth to Everett till I got tired of doing that. And
So you lived in the chicken coop after the Navy
after the Navy,
for 2 years.
maybe less than that, maybe a year. But you know, poor Lenore put up with a lot.
I just wanted to hear that.